Good evening YouTube, it's John the Old Geek, and I was going to have a couple of weeks off doing these as I work in retail and it's a busy time of year, but seeing as the channel has just hit 200 subscribers, I felt I had to squeeze in one more before I gorge myself on turkey, stuffing and chocolate and go to sleep for a week. Maybe I'll try and shift the 20 or 30 pounds I've gained during all these lockdowns after Christmas. So, tonight's video is a review, and I'm going to do the AD&D module I1, Dwellers of the Forbidden City, the first module in the I or Intermediate series. It was published in 1981 by TSR and was written by David Cook, intended for levels 4 to 7 characters. It's hard to find a review of this venerable adventure without the writer of the piece banging on about its pulp origins. For me, a Brit born in 1971 who had to Google the term a few years back to find out what it meant, that's pretty meaningless. I simply wasn't aware of that form of literature. I'll try not to let that influence my verdict on this module too much though, and I'll be as objective as possible. Suffice to say, my leanings are very much towards Tolkien and medieval history, though I did read some swords and sorcery in the form of Fritz Leiber's For Third and Grey Mouser books when I was in my teens. Dwellers developed from a short scenario that was used at Origins in 1980, and subsequently expanded into the traditional 32-page adventure module that was typical of the era. Also typical of this period was the fact that it lacks much of a plot. There's a little bit of fluff about caravans going missing in a jungle, along with some suggestions of extra plot lines for the DM to introduce and build upon. But what you do get is a massive lost city, hidden for centuries by thick jungle, inhabited by various factions of creatures, plus descriptions of several ways into said city, one of which was a series of passages and caverns that was used in the RPG tournament. Let's kick off with presentation as per usual. Opening the module for the first time, the first impression is one of wow. The city map is a sight to behold, filled with ruined buildings, some areas overgrown, some overtaken by an area of swamp and a small lake. It looks great, but it's not the easiest of maps to read. I can forgive it for that though. There were more maps of specific areas of the city, which are of varying quality, and a couple of maps detailing the 3 possible entrance tunnels, which are both clear and sensible. Well, it's 2.5 entrance tunnels because a couple of them link up halfway along. On the whole, presentation is okay. There's a couple of decent Errol Otis pieces adorning the outer cover and that of the booklet, plus the city map alone could inspire a DM to do great things with the material. The rest of the images, however, are a mixed bag, being mostly quite small and of varying quality. Text is clear and descriptions are kept to very sensible lengths, being easy to work with both in preparation and during play. So, what of the adventure itself? There are 2 main portions to the adventuring parts of the module: the entrances to the city and the city. The 3 entrance tunnels by themselves offer a steely challenge to any party of the suggested levels. Some of the encounters are a little illogical, but that was the norm with tournament products, and they're clearly designed to cause significant casualties, as that is needed in a tournament environment. My own party were forced to retreat twice before finally making it as far as the city itself. A couple of the new monsters that are included within, that's why I've got a Monster Manual 2 just there because they're in that. A couple of those new monsters were a very nasty surprise indeed. Once inside the city, everything is very sandboxy. The various occupied areas and the factions occupying them are given adequate descriptions, plus some details of alliances and motives, but much is left for the DM to fill in based upon the actions of the party, and it is that freedom which is one of the module's great strengths. The DM can do as much or as little as they like with the city. The party can mostly come and go at will once they've secured a way in and out, and their approach to some of the groups within will determine future events. In essence, this is as much a setting as it is a self-contained adventure. I placed the entrance to module C1, the hidden shrine of Tomoe-chan, in one of the ruined temple areas, and that all fitted very nicely and felt logical. Eventually, the party are likely to find out the root cause of the raids upon the caravans, which will culminate in some very intense battles with those who are pulling the strings. The rewards are great, but the potential for failure is very real. Several iconic D&D creatures made their first appearances in this adventure. The Yuan-ti, the Aboleth, and the Tazloi. All were to become staples of the game. However, the Yuan-ti and the Aboleth feel somewhat shoehorned in, and much more could have been made of them, though doing so would have bumped up the level requirements significantly. The Aboleth encounter in one of the entrance tunnels is a particularly nasty early encounter for a mid-level party to cope with. My most recent group suffered very badly here and were also savaged by the yellow musk creeper in the next entrance along, so it is already a tough module for those levels. The DM plot suggestions do include developing the role of the Yuan-ti, and in my opinion it would have been better to have that addition already in place, maybe at the expense of some of the other creatures, the bullywugs perhaps, and push the level suggestion up to about 6 to 8. The Tazloi lair is very interesting, being located high in the treetops, and there is a colony of Mongol men who add scope for some entertaining role-playing with their comedy value. Some of the reactionary internet types have managed to find them offensive. Screw those people, and shove your holier-than-thou Twitter bickering where the sun don't shine. I love Mongol men. They're great fun in this adventure, providing possible, if slightly irritating, allies for the party, though this could come at a cost. Finding allies, or at least setting up a base of sorts in the city, is necessary for a party of the suggested level range to have a chance of survival. It does suggest levels 4 to 7, as I already mentioned. I would alter that to level 4, forget it. Level 5, okay, if lucky with stats and hit point rolls and very well equipped, but mostly levels 6 or 7, and a level higher if more Yuan-ti are added. Even though the Yuan-ti are underused in the pre-written encounters, the few that are there already are tough enough. Add in the Aboleth, shambling mounds, a high-level magic user, a base with a lot of bugbears, and not forgetting Tazloi flinging stuff from the treetops, and this adventure can end up having a barrage of very tough fights indeed. Dwellers of the Forbidden City has the potential to be a very long adventure, maybe even developed into a mini-campaign, but my group eventually tired of going back and forth, and seemed a little relieved when it was finally completed. Like me, they are Brits, and like me, they don't really know pulp literature. In fact, I'd be confident in saying that some of them wouldn't have a clue what it is or what themes are encompassed in it. One factor in this slight malaise may have been my inclusion of the hidden shrine of Tomoe-chan within the ruins, as that led the whole escapade in the Forbidden City to being stretched out for several months of gameplay. With the DM inspired by the subject matter and style, I1 is close to perfect. There's no doubt that it's worth a look for any groups wanting an old school sandbox experience. It provides a setting, a basic framework of factions and motivations, and has masses of room for expansion. But that sense of incompleteness can be both a positive and a negative. If the nature of the sandbox doesn't completely inspire the person developing it further, then it can all be a little bit flat. It didn't quite grab me or my players, mainly due to our own fantasy influences and preferences, and thus I never really felt the urge to complete it. There'll be some who criticise me for that. I will admit to preferring a bare bones of a plot to work with. My best GMing in recent years tends to be either my own self-written adventures or scenarios with an existing plot structure, but which are light on detail or with underdeveloped NPCs, as I am better at bringing an NPC to life within a story and improvising extra details to that story rather than adding a story to a ready-made location. So, a rating. I can see why certain people with specific fantasy influences rate this one very highly, but for me it's a 7 out of 10. There's a lot of meat on the bones of this adventure, but it all just needs a little bit of seasoning to bring out the flavour and complete the meal. A bit like Christmas dinner. I wasn't the right DM for it. Maybe you are. Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like my witterings, give me a like and a subscribe. Thanks for watching once again, and Merry Christmas. Or, bah, humbug. Look, the hat stands up. Hey, hoo-hoo.